Have you ever been following up on a family story only to discover something that made you think, wait, that can't be right? Let me show you what happened when I was researching my mother-in-law's Salem, Massachusetts family and accidentally discovered we're connected to one of Boston's most notorious gangsters. Hey there, if we haven't met before, I'm Lisa with Are You My Cousin? And this YouTube channel is designed to help you find your ancestors, grow your family tree, and not be overwhelmed in the process. So if that sounds like a cup of tea, you're in the right place. Now, today's video is sponsored by newspapers.com, and I'll be sharing with you a little bit more about them in just a moment. So here's how it all started. I was researching my mother-in-law's father, Samuel Solomon, out of Salem, Massachusetts. And in my research, of which I had done the traditional census records, marriage records, immigrant records, city directories, I had discovered two other men in particular who were often within the vicinity of Samuel, and they had the same surname. I found Harry Solomon and Isidore Solomon. Both men were kind of in Samuel's world, but I couldn't figure out who or how they were actually related. I couldn't figure out that relationship. I was able to ask my mother-in-law before she passed away who were Harry and Isidore, and she told me that they were his nephews. So Samuel was the uncle, Harry and Isidore were the nephews. With that piece of information, I was able to build out the family tree, both the direct line and the collateral lines of Harry and Isidore a little bit more. But I really didn't want to stop there. I wanted to understand the Solomon family. I wanted to understand who they were as a family, how they worked together, and be able to bring that story of their family down to their descendants. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Once I learned Harry and Isidore were Samuel's nephews, I built out their family trees using traditional research, using traditional records, and then I turned to the newspapers. You see, these three Solomon men were local businessmen. And I thought this is a great opportunity to see what I could perhaps learn about their businesses and who they were as men in the community through the newspaper research. I felt like newspapers would give me a good opportunity to see if they were perhaps written up there and see what else I might perhaps find. Because you see, when you go into newspaper research, you're not just collecting dates, you're collecting the stories. If you think this starts to sound a lot like the social history that I talk about in other videos, you're absolutely right, guys. Newspapers are the number one source that I use when it comes to seeking out social history for my research. Now, before I turn the camera around to show you what I found and how I found it, let me talk for just a moment about today's sponsor, newspapers.com. Now, I spend a lot of time researching ancestors over at newspapers.com, both for myself and for my clients. And actually, for me, newspaper research is like transporting in a time machine to the time and place where my ancestors lived. And newspapers.com is a fabulous place to start your genealogy newspaper research because they have over 1 billion pages from the US, the UK, Canada, Australia, and beyond. For viewers of this video, newspapers.com is extending a discount of 20% off of their Publisher's Extra subscription. I will have a link for that in the description below. So I'm going to turn the camera around, take you over to newspapers.com, and I'll show you exactly what I was searching for and how I accidentally found that gangster in the family tree. So we are over here at newspapers.com, and I'm going to, as I said, show you what I was searching and how I found and made the connection that I did. Remember, I was looking at three men, Samuel Solomon, my mother-in-law's father, and then two other men, Harry Solomon and Isidore Solomon. And those were his nephews. So I just chose Harry to start with. So I typed in Harry Solomon. I gave a fairly open-ended date, large date range for him, which covers a lot of the time that he would have been over here prior and interacting with Samuel Solomon, my main focus. And then also I put in the location. So the family was from Salem, Massachusetts. That was Essex County. So when I did that, I actually got 46 matches. So I thought that's a good amount, and that's obviously very doable for me to go and search for. So as I scroll down, what you can see I was seeing some things that kind of made me think perhaps there was more than one Harry Solomon, but that was okay. With only 46 to go, I could actually go through each and every one of them. Now, I got very lucky because this very first item, I just started here. This was 1933. I just clicked on it and saw, let's see what I have. And so here's what we come up with. And I was very excited about this because I had known from the city directory that Harry was part of the Hawthorne Cafe there in Salem. and subsequently Lynn. And I was like, oh, this is great. Let's read. I know this is going to be him. Let's read about it. And so when I started to read this little snippet of article, it says, because of the recent demise of Charles King Solomon, who was a member of the original corporation conducting the Hawthorne Cafe, Oxford Street, a new corporation has been formed with a capital of $25,000 to carry on the business. The incorporators are Melvin and Ethel Solomon and Mary C. Lynch, the latter to serve as clerk. She is an attorney's secretary. Melvin Solomon is a nephew of Harry Solomon, a brother of the late King Solomon, and Ethel Solomon is Harry Solomon's wife. Aha. I was excited because I knew I had the right guy because of the connection to the Hawthorne Cafe. And while I knew who Melvin Solomon was, I knew who Ethel was, that she was Harry's wife, I had never heard of Charles King Solomon. And what an odd nickname, right? What an odd name. And so I was thrilled to have this article. I thought this is a really nice piece of information. And it's telling me there's another brother that I knew that Harry and Isidore were brothers, but there's another brother. So at this point, I have another brother, but I don't really know who Charles King Solomon is. And King in parentheses, obviously it's a nickname, but odd when I thought about it. I headed back over to the homepage here and I thought, let's find Charles. Let's see who he is. So a little quick Charles, and I'm going to go ahead and put King in the middle of that. I'm going to drop this down a little bit. I'm going to adjust my dates just a wee bit because I know that article was written that we were just looking at in 1933. Charles Solomon obviously was deceased at that point, so I changed my dates down to 1933. Again, I'm going to keep it in Essex County, Massachusetts, because that's where Harry was living, and let's hit click. All right, so we got 28 matches for this type of thing, and when I start to scroll down, just to get an overview of what's happening, I'm seeing a lot of stuff happening in January and February for Charles King Solomon. And again, this is a fairly small newspaper that I'm getting results from. This is the Lynn Daily Item. And so as I keep popping down, I'm seeing things like police pop up. I'm seeing words popping out in these little snippets about shootings, arrest, all of that. So when I come to the bottom one here, looks like there might be a picture. Let's see what that one's about, because I'm always going to go for a picture if I can find one. So I come over here and, okay, it's a picture of two women, companions of King Solomon. This is January 26, 1933, out of Lynn, the Daily Item. And when I read the caption here, I was really hoping to have a picture of him. It says Claire White and Helen Etheridge accompanied Charles King Solomon, reputed overlord of Boston's racket leaders, to a Boston nightclub where he was cornered and shot down by 4 men. Gangland bullets ended the career of the king, the day he was to appear before federal officials on the question of his removal from Brooklyn, where he was under indictment for an alleged $14 million rum smuggling conspiracy. Wow, I did not expect that at all. So it turns out that Harry's brother, Charles, was one of Boston's notorious racketeers. And there are multiple articles about him in the Lynn newspaper because that's where his brother was doing business. There are multiple articles that I found in the Boston newspaper. Guys, I probably spent 10 hours of research just reading about this gentleman because it was so fascinating to find out. But we can come down and continue to read more. There's a whole article about him describing that he was Charles Solomon, former convict who became known as King of Boston Racketeers and was carried from the second floor, and goes on to describe his funeral here as well. How fun was that, guys? I was not expecting to find that at all. So let me summarize what that find was. We had Harry named as the brother of Charles King Solomon because they were brothers, and Harry was the nephew of Samuel Solomon. Now, before digital newspaper databases, I would never have made that connection for the family to that infamous Boston gangster. It's not that the information wasn't there. The newspapers obviously were there, but First off, I don't live in Massachusetts. I would have had to have gotten to Massachusetts, to the Boston or the Salem area. I would have had to find the right repository that had the newspapers I needed. I would have had to read those newspapers page by page, likely on a microfilm machine. And the chances of walking away, of never finding what I needed, were very high. It's very hard to read that many, especially when you don't know exactly what you're looking for. So I can absolutely see why earlier genealogy researchers didn't do a lot of newspaper research. But guys, when you have databases like newspapers.com, there is no reason for you not to do newspaper research at this point. So what does this actually mean for your research? What did I learn by finding Charles the King Solomon in the family tree? First, I want to make sure that you guys always follow up on family stories. Oral history for the Solomon family is really slim. There's not much of it. But when I asked a direct question, I was able to learn that one little nugget, that one little piece. Harry and Isidore were nephews of Solomon. From that little piece of information that I had, then I was able to build an effective research plan. And that's what opened up an entire side of the family I never knew about. Now next, number 2, make sure you're going beyond vital records. Make sure you're going beyond those traditional records, okay? The birth, marriage, and death records, absolutely so important to our genealogy research. But make sure you're going beyond those. They give you dates, they give you a specific place, a specific time. But make sure you're expanding into the other records, estate records, deeds, newspapers. Go into those newspapers and learn about your ancestors. Number 3, be creative and open-minded in your search strategies. I wasn't searching for a gangster or a black sheep in the family. I was searching for businessmen in those newspapers. I was looking for information on their businesses so I could learn a little bit more about who they were and what was important to them. I was looking for some of their community involvement so that I could understand what they were about. But the whole time I was doing that, I was also open to, what am I learning about them I didn't expect? And how could that open up another avenue of research for me? And number 4, I want you to remember that our ancestors were complex individuals and they were living in complicated times. Not that different than you and me. Understanding the historical context that they lived in helps us understand their choices and circumstances without judgment. So guys, if you remember nothing else that we've talked about this entire video, here's what I want you to remember. Newspaper research isn't just about finding exciting stories, isn't just about finding the famous people or the black sheep ancestors. It's about seeing our ancestors as three-dimensional people who lived full, complex lives. The discovery that I made in my in-laws tree came about because I was willing to dig deeper into the social history surrounding them. It wasn't just enough for me to know that Samuel and Harry and Isidore existed. I wanted and needed to know and understand how they lived. So here's my question for you. Have you ever followed up on a family story and discovered something unexpected? If you have, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your stories. Now, if you would like to learn more about researching your ancestors in newspapers, watch the video on your screen now. Newspapers, your secret weapon for genealogy research. And just as a reminder, I will have a link to that 20% discount for newspaper.com in the description below.